Well, hello again, Steve here, and I will try this video for the third time. I don't know why it didn't work the first two times, but today I wanted to ask the question, why bother complaining about somebody like Justin Trudeau, especially if we believe in democracy? Now, I notice there's a lot of people in so-called Western Canada who complain a lot about Trudeau, but when I dig down in questions with them, I find out that they believe very strongly in democracy. And this is a little bit confusing to me, but I understand why it's maybe not confusing to others, because a lot of times we don't think about it in terms of the logical extraction of it. See, it makes sense in small groups or whatever, if we're going to make a decision, hey, let's have a show of hands, in a Toastmasters club or a club or whatever, everybody's paying their dues, so everybody should have a say and so on. But what happens, I would say, in democracy is that you have the expansion of the franchise. I mentioned before, my brother mentally handicapped, and he's encouraged to vote. He can't add 2 plus 2, but he's expected to maybe be able to make a rational decision on who should govern others. This is an extreme example of what actually happens in democracy. It gets expanded and expanded to the point where many millions of people have an extreme vested interest in expanding state power because they get more, social benefits and what have you. And I've used the analogy before of shit soup, right? So if you have a corrupt system, which is that's what that is, right? Because when you have a system where people are voting to steal money from other people, I don't know what else to call that, right? So it's corrupt. And the more you allow something to corrupt and to fester, the worse it gets. Think of, I like to use the analogy of shit soup, and I just thought of another aspect of it too. If you have a little bit of shit in the soup, it's shit soup, right? And who's going to eat it? More shit in it, the more shitty it is, but it's still always shit soup. But the thing is, if you leave it fester, it becomes even smellier and worse, and arguably a shittier kind of soup, a rotten shit soup, right? So from that perspective, if somebody believes strongly in a corrupt system, why would they be surprised when somebody just wholeheartedly corrupt rises to power? I mean, I used to say years ago that one of the reasons why people vote for corrupt people is because they don't know the difference. They don't know honesty. To them, honesty is dangerous. It's lies and so on. I was talking to somebody about this not long ago. It was actually a family member of mine who was saying that all we have to do is stick with the truth, with the facts. We're always safe. And I was pointing out to her, whoa, hang on a second here. Though facts may be true, they can be extremely dangerous for those who carry them, especially if you want to speak about them publicly. Yeah, you can get bike locked and so on, right? So, it's not surprising. And for those of you who are not familiar with who Trudeau is, if you're from away or whatever, it's Canada's so-called prime minister, and he's sort of the Barack Obama of Canada. I mean, and of course, in many ways, right? Because he's Barack Obama was not a man who made himself, right? He had backers behind him, I believe, people like Rahm Israel, Emmanuel, and so on, who were put him up there as plausible deniability for their own malfeasance, I would say. And I think the same thing with Trudeau happens, that I don't think he's really smart enough, though he's probably quite smart, but he's not smart enough to actually aspire to being what he is. I mean, he's pretty pathetic in so many ways. And I would say that this is an indictment upon many Canadians, so-called Canadians, who would vote for somebody like this. Because if you think about it, his father was prime minister. Why does he get to be, what are the odds that he would get to be prime minister? I mean, think about it. If somebody wins the lottery, what are the odds that in the course of the next few people who win the lottery, your son wins the lottery? You'd say, no, that's corrupt. That's rigged somehow, right? It's something like 35 million people, and all that people can find is the son of a previously incredibly corrupt prime minister. I mean, come on, a very destructive prime minister. But this is what when people believe in corruption, their minds become corrupted, I would say, and they vote for people who are corrupt. And of course, the other thing too is that a corrupt system becomes extremely profitable. Criminally minded people see that it's very profitable to get involved with that corruption. I mean, a guy like Trudeau, who never worked a day in his life, probably was already quite well off. He'd be extremely well off financially at this point, and in terms of connections and so on. And and in a corrupt system, he can get away with things. I mean, he can get away with firing his justice minister. He can get away with, putting in place a corrupt RCMP woman, head of the RCMP, who will not investigate him and will back away and will not arrest, Islamic terrorists flying on no-fly lists and all kinds of stuff. He can get away with all this stuff because he knows how to pull the strings within a corrupt system. It's not a rule of law, right? So I think the lesson here is for us to realize that true freedom doesn't come through the ballot box, right? I think it was Joseph Stalin once said, your vote doesn't count. It's those who count your ballots who count. And real freedom, I've heard it once said by somebody, that I'd rather be free within myself and live in a corrupt society than live in a free society and be corrupt within. So what that means then is we can improve the quality of our lives by being as free as we can in our thoughts within, in our conversations with those we choose to hang out with, in terms of our health, improving our health, the diets we eat, the exercise we do, our relationships with our families and friends, our health of mind, our health of spirit, our health of emotions. All of that can give us immense momentary and in situ freedom within ourselves, peace of mind. And in those cases, we no longer have to complain about guys like Trudeau. In fact, it's probably the strongest point that we can have, because that's how we have the greatest, I think, positive influence on others, is by being a positive influence upon ourselves. And the more of us who can be more positively influential on ourselves and others can really change society in a positive and wholesome way. Steve here again. If you like what I'm doing, please like, subscribe, and share. Once again, Coffee Chat is not going anywhere on YouTube fast these days. The only way it'll get moving is if people share it out, because it's very difficult to find. But you can also find me at innergenie.com, and you can click on the link for the YouTube channel there. And there's also another YouTube channel which I'm not posting on, unfortunately, very much these days. It's called Inner Genie, I believe. But you can also say hello through the comments, or you can say hello through the email link, which I do check about once a week or so there, because I don't get a whole lot of clicks on that. We'll talk again soon. Bye for now.